All right, so we have about 20 minutes left. We have a lovely assistant here from Elsevier who has a microphone. Tom, is this the first time you've been called lovely today?
No, it's like the fifth.
Comments, questions for our panelists?
Hi, Ted Campion, New England Journal of Medicine. What we've heard makes clear that this is a massive, sophisticated operation. Who's financing it all? Where are the bucks coming from, and why are they investing them in this?
I'll start a little bit about evidence of who's doing this. When we started working with IEEE and we started monitoring the IP addresses that were being used by SCI Hub, we very quickly had about 100,000 IP addresses used in 57 different countries, and they all resulted back to a depot data center in the middle of Moscow. Now, if anybody knows how Russia works and thinks that a large operation like that could be working in the middle of Moscow without the Russian authorities knowing about it, I think that would be pretty unclear. For the scale of it and how much money of it is, we had some investigators searching the dark web to try and find out some more information. I think they must have tripped some traps that they set. And overnight, they moved all 100,000 IP addresses so that they didn't appear to be coming from Moscow. They appeared to be coming from the Seychelles. Now, that is a huge operation. That is an operation that is a lot of money. There must be a lot of people working on this. But from what I've been told by the authorities, the Russians are 10 years ahead of us. And we're not playing with a level playing field, are we? Because if any of us tried to do anything like that, we'd go to jail for 10 years, whereas they can do it with impunity. So where they're getting their money from, who knows, right? But I think we all pretty much know. But it's a very, very big operation.
Can I ask a follow-up question? There was a much publicized incident some months back when the Russian government did something that Alexandra Albakian did not approve of, and she temporarily shut down access to SCI Hub to users within Russia. That's the version of the story that I heard. How does that square with the explanation that the Russian government, or the hypothesis that the Russian government itself is behind SCI Hub?
Well, it wasn't actually the Russian government. It was some Russian researchers that named a parasite after her, which I thought was pretty bloody funny. It gave me a great laugh. So that wasn't actually the Russian government. That was Russian researchers who I think, they're not stupid. They know what goes on. And then you don't have to love everything your president does, right?
No, I don't.
Give me the mic. No, I think that's a good point, though, that once we saw that was happening and she shut down the Russians, that were like, oh, well, maybe she's not connected with the government after all. I mean, but we don't know that, obviously. There's no hard evidence for that.
Joe, anything to add? Okay.
I think I'm on.
We have a virtual question.
We do have a virtual question from Duke University Press asking if RA21 is the only reasonable way to subvert the appeal of SCI Hub.
No.
I mean, it's one way, and I think there's different views on this, but anything that is going to continue to use usernames and passwords is going to continue to be hacked, right? I think anything that is trying to look at different ways of authenticating is laudable, and we should help with that. But it's got to be taken with security in mind and the security of credentials and everything like that. It's not the only way. IP intrusion that we started with a large group of publishers and the American Association of Publishers will help, because that is gathering intelligence and pushing out the results of that intelligence out to not only publishers but to libraries. Libraries need to understand what is going on, and they need to start blocking this and making their patrons aware of the dangers of revealing their usernames and passwords and therefore their profiles and their credentials and everything else. So it's not the only thing.
And I'll just, sorry, if I could just jump in for a sec. This is one of the great challenges that we face. I say, speaking as a librarian, it can be very hard to get my colleagues interested in this issue. The story that I always share is of a friend of mine who works for a small society publisher who found out that SCI Hub was fishing for network credentials on her small liberal arts college campus. She sent a message about it to her IT folks and a message to the librarians, and the way she reported it to me is that the IT folks wigged out and the librarians never responded. And one reason that we have a hard time getting a lot of interest in this on the library side is that when you talk about it in terms of illegal access to licensed content, the response is, well, this is just a symptom. The real problem is Elsevier, or publishers who restrict access to content. SCI Hub is a symptom of the problem. It's not the problem. And obviously, this is a difficult, complex conversation to have. Anyway, sorry, Sari.
Oh, thanks. No, I just wanted to also follow up with Andrew. So, and that's why we're developing these technical solutions. So for the question for Duke University Press, so we do have some technical solutions that we are going to communicate more widely, but we have to be very careful. So I can't really go into too much detail about those solutions, but you can always talk to me offline about that. Thanks.
And actually, we're working with the membership department at IEEE to come up with a way of potentially using the MAC addresses that we all have on our machines as like a secondary authentication. The problem you have with anything you do with SCI Hub right now is if you put more barriers in place and make it harder to access the legitimate content, the more you have where the possibility of driving them to SCI Hub. So it's a really interesting thing that's going on at the moment. Putting too much up could force them to go the other way. So, it's a really hard position to be in.
Yes.
Hi, Keith from Clarivid Analytics. A couple things were touched on about the appeal of SCI Hub, and I'd be curious to get a discussion going around this because it's my understanding that people even that do have access through their institution are still going to SCI Hub because just the user experience is just simple, right? And I will just suggest there is something that publishers can do. There is a tool called Copernio. Full disclosure, it's a Clarivate tool now, but it's free. And it's it's an extension that sits in the browser. And it uses the credentials for the institution, no matter where the researcher is, to get to the publisher's version of record. And for me, this is one thing publishers can do, is they can promote the use of tools like this that will actually try to counteract the appeal of SCI Hub, because I just think people are drawn to it because it's just so simple. So how can we come up with simple solutions that help users get to the content that their institutions are already serving up for them?
And is it actually possible, this is one of the things I really struggle with, is it possible to make legitimate access as friction-free as stealing?
Yep.
The image that I always have in my mind is, can we ever make it as easy to walk into a store, as easy to pay for a candy bar as it is to walk in, take the candy bar off the shelf and
That's
leave?
right.
Or is there a certain amount of friction that is inevitable to legitimate access? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either, but I
worry
think there's
about it.
something we should look at there as an institution.
Just one comment on that. I'm not wholly sold on the fact that it's just that it's easy. I think it's because they have everything. And no library in the world, no university can afford to have a site license with every single publisher in the world. It's just not possible. Not even Oxford or Harvard. So even if you are a researcher and you're researching in your daily work, you're going to come across a paywall where you're going to be asked to pay $35 at some point. Whereas if you can access a site where you're not going to get any time during the day a paywall that's going to ask you to pay $35, that, I think, is why people go, not just the ease. Because I think, library portals, you go and sit in a library and you look on the library portal and you search across everything. That's pretty simple. And these are students doing degrees, right? So it's not just that, I don't think. I think it's the fact that they have everything.
Yes, Lisa.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm always interested in making things easier for users. Lisa Hinchliffe at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. But given, I think this is a unique panel to really be focused on sort of not the user experience of SCI Hub, but the actual nefarious activity of SCI Hub. One of the things I'm curious is whether we are also seeing attacks on the publishers' networks themselves. So, I mean, we've talked a lot here about compromised user credentials through institutions, but I'm guessing you all have a lot of staff who are, logging into your networks and have access to your databases. So is there also intrusion that's happening directly to, not coming through our users, or are our users just so easy to get through that no one needs to go for your staff?
That's a really good question. Thank you, Lisa. I think before the activity really ensued that we saw that was coming through customer accounts, that was in December of 2016. Before that, it really wasn't skyrocketing. It was a lot less activity. And what we did do was block all, at IEEE, we blocked all anonymous IP addresses because that's how we knew that they were accessing. But they switched gears, and then in 2006, they went right back into through users' accounts. So any of the IP addresses that we do collect from customers, because we can't see what's happening on their firewalls, we're collecting them, as Andrew mentioned, that we have about 100,000 IP addresses, and we're blocking them as well. So that's another reason why publishers should also participate in the IP intrusion database.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it better myself. I think it's because it's so easy right now, the way they're doing it. And what we are all got to be careful of is when we are going to do something about it, there's some things that we can't talk about that are going to be happening in the next few months, block this route, they're going to find another route. So we're already trying to be ahead of that, and we're looking at all proxy providers, so all remote access systems, and getting them to be able to do the things that I can't talk about. So we've got to get ahead of it, and the next thing will be they will try publishers. But now we know, and we can track and we can look at it. The only real thing we've got to do is everybody get involved, put the information in so we can track it and we can block it. And even if it's whack-a-mole, if we're doing it in real time, we'll really damage them, because it's not easy to go out and get another 100,000 IP addresses. Right? It's not easy to do a lot of this, and I think we can really make a difference. And what we can't do
in a very general
is get them to take down what they've got. But what we've got to do is stop them getting all the new stuff. Because if we can make them less relevant, then hopefully people will go back to using their library portals. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, at a very high level and a very general level, I represent a lot of corporations. And I've been doing this for 20 years. And I will tell you that it is a national goal of many nation states to steal every bit and byte of United States intellectual property that they can get their hands on. Every piece of knowledge that ever has been created in or by Americans in the United States, as well as other nations around the world, to obtain that is the national objective of many nation states. Now, there's nothing any one of us in this room can do about that problem, right? That is a state problem. That is a problem of intelligence, cyber warfare, espionage, state policy, as well as international law. But you can do something about things that are happening inside the walls of your academic institution and with your students, right? So, think globally, act locally. The answer to your question is yes, for every American corporation, for every corporation that produces intellectual property. But this is really an example of something you can do concretely, which is part of the solution.
And also, these people are very sophisticated, and they're actually planting people inside corporates. Now, we've not got any evidence that they're doing that in the university system, but we do have a lot of evidence where families are threatened at home, and people are made to take secrets from corporations. Now, how are you going to stop that?
There aren't any jobs in the university, so they can't plant people very easily in the university.
So
there's a question on the floor, but I just wanted to see if we have any from virtual attendees.
Thank you, Rick. We did get a follow-up from Duke, and Andrew sort of addressed it, but I will ask it, because it was sort of a question of good ideas for delivering something as appealing as SCI Hub, as a one-stop shop, if there's something that publishers collectively could do approaching it that way.
So something that has everything, no friction, and it's free. Go.
Right. You can do that Monday, right?
I think the difficulty that publishers have that maybe films and music don't have is that people like a publisher. Now, I worked for the ACS for 11 years and went all over the world with them, and people loved the ACS. Chemists all over love it. They would go to ACS. They're not going to the film. It's not like somebody's going to a film studio to see everything they've done, but they do with publishers. And I think the difficulty publishers have is they want to capture people, they want to give them that experience of the publisher and everything that the publisher has. So trying to create an iTunes for publishers, I think, is really difficult, because then the identity of the publisher could be lost. And I think that's another difficulty that we have with that. And also, you don't buy a site license for films or music, and publishing is bought in a different way. So there's lots more challenges, and it's a lot more complex, I think, than trying to solve downloaded CDs or music or films.
Question at the back.
Yeah, hi. Stuart Maxwell from Scholarly IQ. It's a question, I think, probably for Joe. As we sort of come more towards sort of data protection and the understanding of value of data, are there potentially any liabilities for the provider of the technology, say from a librarian, that they are maybe providing the channel that somebody might lose their data through this phishing and scraping, and they might actually have some sort of threat to their business from sort of those people who are victims of it, saying, actually, but you're the one that exposed me to this?
It's a great question, and if you were to ask me who are the most creative people in America, I would say they're the plaintiffs' class action lawyers that conceive of these types of causes of action, right? And so it would not surprise me at all if at some point, enterprising plaintiffs' class action lawyers who have sued every American corporation that has ever had a data breach. I mean, that's what happens, right, when you have a data breach in America and you're a corporation. Number one, you have to do this kind of public mea culpa, report to the regulators, report to the victims, and as night follows day, you're then sued in a plaintiff's class action lawsuit, which you will settle because you will never take that to trial because it's so terribly embarrassing, right? So it would not surprise me in the least if at some point that happens. They're very good business people. They will pick their target wisely. It will probably be an entity that is not as big as a major, let's say, private university. State universities may have sovereign immunity or may not. It'll probably be a well-respected mid-size educational institution, one that could pay, a seven-figure settlement to make it all go away. It would not surprise me at all if that lawsuit is coming. Not to scare people even more.
All right, we are effectively out of time. I think there's one more question outstanding. As long as it's a yes or no question, I think we can entertain it.
I'm not sure it is a yes or no question, so do you want to entertain it or not?
Please, go ahead. You're an award winner, so I think we have to go ahead.
Thanks. It's kind of been hinted at, stealing the silver. Criminals don't just come and steal the silver, they're stealing other things. I'm just curious about the panel's opinion on the fact that I've heard posited that SCI Hub doesn't even care about scholarly content at all. Like, it's actually maybe just a front for a whole bigger other thing, and bringing down scholarly communications is potentially just a side aspect, but that's not what they're interested in. It is about the credentials. It could be some huge, a big, large-scale national hacking thing, and it's just a side project. I just was very curious as to the panelists' expert opinions on this.
I would say we don't know. We don't know.
In a way, it doesn't matter, does it?
And we'll probably never really know.
Yeah. My view is it probably started with somebody in Kazakhstan who wanted to do research, who kept getting faced with $35 a pop for her research. Now, you can go and say, well, how poor is Kazakhstan? If maybe all the money wasn't taken by all the corrupt officials, they probably could afford to have site licenses all of the universities. But I think it probably started off quite well-meaning, but I think now the evidence shows us that it's probably been hijacked, and as we've seen lately with all of the Facebook attacks, they are targeting everything we do. the Scottish referendum, the UK votes for Brexit, your presidential election, everything. They are disrupting everything. And what I think, and somebody said to me, you know, one of the reasons why the wall came down is when, you know, Mr. Reagan had his Star Wars up there, and what did they have? You know, a load of rusty old tanks and not much. And this man is not going to let that happen again, is he? He is very aggressive, and he will make sure that they have the best of everything. And the way of getting the best of everything is make sure you got the best research. So what came first? Probably the idea of getting annoyed because she's asked to pay $35 for a research article. But that's my view.
Sari, anything to add?
No, I think I agree with what Joe was saying mostly. We don't know. We don't.
Well, would you join me in thanking our panel again, and thank you for your excellent conversation.